Hello, I'm Richard with EV4U Custom Conversions. And in this video, we're going to talk about classic VW flywheel options. What are the options when converting a custom VW, whether it be a bus, a Thing, a Karmann Ghia, or a Beetle? Well, you basically have four options. You can use the stock flywheel. So you pull the stock engine out of the vehicle, stock or not, I mean, the existing internal combustion engine, and you reuse the flywheel. Or you can use a lightened flywheel, which we'll take a look at. They're an 8 dowel lightened flywheel, and we'll talk about the weight differences. And it's an off-the-shelf item that you can pick up at VW shops. And then there's going to be a custom aluminum flywheel that we'll talk about. And then of course there's the option of no flywheel at all. Now we're not going to discuss this today. We have a video that talks about to clutch or not to clutch. And that's basically the only purpose of the flywheel is as a clutch mounting point. So if you're not going to use a clutch, you don't need a flywheel. And so we have a video, we have multiple videos, but we have one that specifically deals with the clutch, to use it or not to use it. And so I'll try to remember to put that in the link below, and you can check that out. So today we're basically going to talk about these two, a lightened flywheel and the custom flywheel. But like I said, you could use a stock flywheel. And we'll talk about that, and we're going to do a little more in-depth look at these two, and you can figure whether or not, expense-wise and so forth, what route you want to go. So let's take a little deeper look. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at two flywheels, a lightened flywheel that you can purchase from a VW shop, or a custom aluminum flywheel. And they're only available from a couple sources. So let's look at first the weight and then the cost, and then I'm going to talk about these two figures right here. So first off, the weight. Now the weight of a stock 200 millimeter VW flywheel is, and I'll go down here, let's see, stock. And so they're 18 pounds. I need to back up just a little bit. There's basically two flywheels that are used on these classic VWs. There was a 6-volt flywheel for 6-volt systems and a 12-volt. The 6-volt was a 180 millimeter flywheel, and the 12-volt was a 200 millimeter. Now all the hot rodders and all of our conversions use the 200 millimeter because you have a larger diameter clutch setup, which gives you more contact space, more grip. Okay, so the stock one is 18 pounds. A lightened flywheel, which we'll take a look at one, they're 12 pounds. For a chromoly, that's what we use, the chromoly 200 millimeter lightened flywheel, 8 dowel. Okay, and then the custom flywheel, aluminum, they're 5 1/4 pounds. So you can see the difference between stock flywheel and the lightened flywheel. So 6 pounds, and it makes a difference in an internal combustion vehicle where you need that rotating mass for that 4-stroke engine. But for what we're using, look at what we're saving. You're saving anywhere from 12 3/4 pounds to 6 3/4 pounds. That's a lot. There's also another advantage. When you have an older vehicle that was originally 6 volts and you're going to use a 200 millimeter flywheel, say the Lightened flywheel or a stock one, they are a little too large for that original 6 volt bell housing, and you have to do some clearance work. Not too major or anything, and you know, a lot of them, they've already done that in the past because they've upgraded to 12 volts. And so anyway, that's not a real big deal, but it's another advantage where this fits all of them, no problem. And you'll see why in a moment. Now, the cost. The stock ones run about, and of course, you know, it's going to vary where you get and everything, but around $90. Okay? And the Lightened ones run about $100. And the custom one, better sit down for this. $400. So a little more cost, and you would have to weigh all that. The other issue is you know, availability. These are available 1,000 different sources. Well, a lot. A lot of people have them on their shelves. So readily available. These, not so. We've been waiting from 2 different sources for months in order to get these flywheels. So, and we're going to take a closer look at them, but that's kind of the overview of the stock versus the Lightened versus the custom. Now, the other things we're going to do after we take a look at these things, you know, in the flesh, so to speak, we're going to do a couple other tests just to see, you know, does this have an advantage for a conversion or not, other than these other things that you can, you know, weigh and decide for yourself. And so we're going to talk about run-up current. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, if you've watched any of our other videos, we did one a while back where we were testing the balance of a flywheel clutch setup, and we used a warp 9 motor to spin that up. And it's easy to do. We just set it on the workbench, connect 12 volts to it. It'll spool up to about 3,000 RPMs, and we can, you know, do whatever we want to do with that. In that case, we were checking the balance. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to measure that spool up current. So what that is when you first connect the, you know, power to the motor, it's going to draw current to get it up to speed, and it'll draw so much current, and as it gets to speed, the current will drop back. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the maximum current. So how much energy does it take to get that rotating mass moving? And so the greater the diameter, the more energy it's going to use. The heavier, you know, the greater the mass, the more energy it's going to use. But how much more? Okay, we did a video years ago talking about LED lighting. You know, at that time, a big talking point was that people, as part of the conversion process, they were switching over to LED lighting. You know, tail lights, brake lights, turn signals, headlights, everything to LED. And you know, if you don't know, you don't know. You know, I mean, that's the thing that we see the most is people just have no clue what they don't know. And the way to know is to actually observe and measure things. And that's what we've done. So when we told somebody the range of something, it wasn't estimated, calculated. No, it was observed. It was known. Not only did we, estimate it and calculate it, but we had actuality to back it up. And so that's how we knew our range formula was spot on, because we had actual observation repeatedly, different vehicles over and over and over, many, many times. So that's what we found out, back to the lights, was that if you looked at how much current draw there was from the incandescent. So what we did was we took our Karmann Ghia, we turned on the flashers, high beam, put our foot on the brake. We turned every 12 volt item on, okay, to see the draw. So with every 12 volt item on, the draw out of our traction pack was very small. And so we didn't measure, do the same thing with all LED. We didn't need to. The point of the whole exercise was that the current draw from our traction pack is so small that if we leave these on all the time versus not using any of those things all the time, the range difference was nothing. Wasn't going to be enough to even discuss. So the point of the exercise was to show that, yeah, LED lights might be nice. And back then, they weren't quite as good as they are today as far as the retrofit for vehicles. And we actually put them in 2008 on our Bug, and they didn't show up any better than the, matter of fact, they didn't show up, the brake lights didn't show up as well as the incandescent did. They weren't as bright. But that was just the design and what they had at the time. That's no longer true. But the point of the exercise was to show that, oh yeah, LED draws a lot less current. Yeah, but it's on the 12 volt system for one. And how much difference was it? Well, we showed that the incandescent drew so little as to not affect your range. So going to LED was just a personal choice. It wasn't going to have a bottom line, difference to your conversion, other than cost, because you're going to replace something you already had with something that's more expensive. So that's what we're trying to do today. Is we're going to do something that's really not super scientific, but it's going to give us an idea. Because before we do it, we can only make assumptions. I don't know how this is going to turn out. I haven't done the test yet. Okay, so at this point, I don't know either. And so what we're going to do is we're going to mount the Lightened flywheel, and we're going to mount the custom flywheel on the same motor. We'll do one and then we'll do the other, back to back. And we're going to read how much current they draw to spin that up. And we'll do it repeatedly. So we'll have, an average of what it's going to take to do that. We'll see, if there's a repeatability. Okay? And we're going to use a 12 volt system that is 400 amp hours. And so spinning these up, it's not going to be a difference in the battery. We'll look at the battery voltage before and after. Because of the amount of capacity we have, that's not going to be a factor. So it's going to be a pretty good head-to-head, what's it going to draw. Now, possible outcome is that there's just not much difference. And so, is it worth the extra cost? Is it worth the extra weight? Potentially weight. Just depends on when you order. But anyway, those are decisions that only you can make. But we're going to give you some information that you can put in the mix for making the decision. And the other we're going to do, so we're going to see how much current it takes to spool that up. So every time you go to accelerate, that's going to be an additional factor in everything. I mean, you got to, of course, you know, turn the wheels. But just at the you know, flywheel point alone. And actually we're going to attach the clutch on both of these. So both of them will be the flywheel and clutch, you know, just the pressure plate. And we'll use that for our test. The other we're going to do is a rundown time. Now that one's pretty predictable. The rundown time will be, you know, when we cut the power from the motor, how long it takes to spool down. Now if you watch the video where we were balancing or checking the balance on this flywheel, it was a large flywheel. It was off of a, it was used with a Tremec 5-speed, I believe it was. But anyway, off of a Jeep. And that flywheel, we watched how quickly it spun down, you know, just the motor by itself, the coupler by itself, the flywheel, and then with the pressure plate. And every time you add mass to it, that spool down time increased. So in this case, it's, you know, in my mind, it's a no-brainer, but we'll find out, you know, how much of a difference, you know, that weight makes. And it's also, you know, this is a smaller diameter, which you'll see in a moment. And we'll see how much these things affect the outcome. So we know the weights, we know the costs, and we're going to know how much current it draws comparatively, because this is, you're not probably going to be running a Warp 9 motor anymore, but you're going to get a comparative. And then the rundown time. So I think it'll be interesting, and I thought you might find it interesting also. So let's take a look at these flywheels a little closer. Okay, here are the two flywheels that we're going to be testing. This is an 8-dowel Lightened flywheel, chromoly flywheel. It's you know, like I said, off the shelf. It's an EMPI product. For you VW people, you'll know who that is. And this is the coupler that's used with it. Just the 4-dowel coupler. They work fine. We've used them many, many times over a lot of years. And of course, you use a stock VW gland nut that holds that flywheel onto the coupler. So that's the one scenario. And of course, we're going to use the same pressure plate for both scenarios. The other one, the custom Lightened flywheel, these both use the 200 millimeter clutch setup. Like I said, we're going to use the exact same pressure plate. This one you can see is made of aluminum with a steel insert here for the friction disc mating. It's a smaller diameter because it doesn't have any starter ring teeth. So like I said, this allows it to fit in the earlier 6-volt setups, no problem. Look at the difference. So no clearancing to a stock 6-volt bell housing. The other big difference with these is instead of using a stock VW mounting pattern, in other words, this is just replicating the end of the VW crankshaft. As a matter of fact, in the early days, Electro Automotive, Felton, California, Michael Brown, they actually took salvaged VW crankshafts and cut the end off and then machined them to be a taper lock coupler. It was, you know, a slick way to do it and accomplish it. But this uses the Porsche bolt pattern. So this coupler is a different bolt pattern. So we, you know, if you use this flywheel, you got to use this coupler. If you use this flywheel, you have to use this coupler. And of course, it's held on with five bolts. This one's held on with the 1 bolt, which commonly referred to as a gland nut. It's actually a bolt. Okay, so these are the two that are going to be used and compared, and you can see, you know, all that we've discussed, the differences. Of course, quite a bit of weight difference, but some things that a lot of people kind of overlook is, you know, once you order this coupler, you're kind of committed to use this, because this coupler will only fit a Porsche flywheel. Well, the Porsche flywheel, they have the same diameter of flywheel, but they set at a different height, so you have a little different magic number, and they take a different clutch. This will not fit it. The clutch plate for the Porsche is a larger diameter, and I'm not, top of my head, not sure what that is right now. So it's not like it's interchangeable. You kind of are committed. So we've had times when we couldn't get these, and so we had to order these. And just order them by themselves is a little expensive sometimes. And so sometimes it's 6 of one, half dozen the other, and it comes down to just a time factor. So these are the things that, you know, you'll need to think about prior to ordering, because once you commit to this, you're committed to this. If you're committed to this, you're committed to this, vice versa. Okay? So let me put the motor on the workbench and set it up, and we'll do our test. We've got the Lightened flywheel with the clutch mounted on our Warp 9 motor on the workbench here. And in the background, you can see our amp gauge and one of the 4 batteries that's powering this. We've got 4 Battle-Born 100 amp hour cells that are going to provide the power for this, and we're going to monitor it to see what the peak current draw is when we spin this up. And so first, let's take a look at the voltage. And we're at 13.3 volts. So now I'm going to turn on the motor, and we'll take a look and see what's the maximum draw when we fire this up. Looked like 90 amps. And as this thing reaches its maximum RPM here, we're still dropping, but we want to remember that 90 amps. It looks like it's settling right about 73, or 37. So now we'll time the rundown. So I've got my stopwatch. I'm going to start it as soon as I flip the switch. Here we go. 16 seconds, 16.156. We're going to call it 16 seconds. I'm going to record that. And what we're going to do is we're going to do this again and see if we have much of a variance. And if not, we're just going to let it run. I mean, you know, we'll take that number as the one. So let me look at the voltage again, 13.3. We're going to fire it up. Let's watch the amps. 90.6. We'll call that 91. I'll make an adjustment here. I think that's what it was last time also. And you can see we're running back to where we're going to be pulling the same. So I'm sure the rundown will be the same. Let's pull that out so you can see it. We're running, we're still dropping, we're at 37.5. We'll let it get down to 37.2. We'll know we're at the same speed as before, or close. There we are, we're at 37.2. Ready to start the clock and go. Dang, dead on. 16 and a fraction. So I'm going to call that good. And so we had what I'm going to call 91 amps peak draw to spin this up, and 37 amps for maintaining it, and a 16-second rundown. So I'm going to remove all this and put the custom flywheel on, and we'll see how that goes. Now with the lightened flywheel, not lightened, the custom aluminum flywheel mounted in place with the same pressure plate as before. Everything, you know, is as identical as we can get it. We'll zoom in on our meter here. You can see we still have 13.3 volts. Go to our amp setting. And so let's give it the power and let's see what happens here. I saw 81. Write that down. Not dropping much anymore. Not as low as it was with the Lightened flywheel. So we'll give it a moment. So it's looking to me like, to maintain RPMs, has taken more current than it did with the Lightened flywheel. I'm going to call it at 37.5. Oh, that's going down 0.4. I don't know. I'm going to write it down as 37 plus, where the other one was 37.2 if I remember correctly. So this one's pulling a little bit more. Yeah. Okay, so now get the stopwatch ready here. Let's zoom out, let you see the thing wind down. Coordinate here and go. Okay, 12.3 seconds. With the Lightened flywheel, we had 16 seconds. So, 4-second difference in the spin down, the run down, and about 10 amps difference on the run up current, and the run current was about the same. 2 tenths, 2 to 3 tenths. We'll do it one more time just for that repeatability here. Let's check our voltage. 13.3. Let me zoom in for you again. To summarize, the 3 possible scenarios for flywheels. You've got a stock one that's 18 pounds and $90. And that's, you know, 12 3/4, 12.75 pounds less. So that's not huge. Not huge difference. 6 pound difference between the Lightened one and the stock one. Only a $10 difference. Like I said, we've traditionally used the chromoly Lightened flywheels for a long time, and then I don't know how many years. It's been quite a few years we've been using this aluminum flywheels. And, you know, I don't know if there's that much of an advantage to, to you know, going with the custom aluminum flywheel versus the off-the-shelf chromoly Lightened flywheel. I really don't see it. I mean, there's a huge price differential, $300. And maybe a 10 amp difference when you know, from the, you know, from a standing start. So, you know, so we've got some results here, presented you with this information, and you can make your own decision. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll do the plug like everybody else on YouTube does. We'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel, hit the like button and the notification button, and let us know that, you know, doing this is worth the time. I mean, just this little project here, I had to look up the information for one, and put this up on the workbench, connect it, you know, heat up and install the coupler and put on the other flywheel, put on the pressure plate. We did our little test for the camera. Then I had to remove the pressure plate, remove the flywheel, pull off the coupler, heat up this one, stick it on. You know, so there's a lot of time goes into one of these things, and if people aren't interested, I got better things to do with my time. So I was curious about it, but not that curious. When you add the fact that maybe there's others that were curious about which way to go on buying these, it's just, of course, limited audience. This is a VW specific setup, although we do use these on the Porsches also. So anyway, hope to see you next time.